Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wall Street for Main Street podcast. My name is Mo Daoud, and today's special guest is the founder and editor of Nomad Capitalist, Andrew Henderson. Andrew, thank you for joining me.
Mo, it's great to be with you. Thank you.
Now, I know right now you're stationed in Cambodia, and people that follow your work, you travel a lot, especially in emerging markets and in Asia. So let's talk about your background and why you decided to leave the U.S. and travel around the world.
Well, I appreciate it, Mo. I've always been someone who looked to the rest of the world, not only for travel, but, from a political point of view early in the world, I said, I don't know, if the United States will always be a beacon of freedom and all the things that people claim it is. And it turns out that I learned a lot of things about the U.S. government and the U.S. economy that I didn't really like. And I said, look, I want to build my own freedom and my own opportunity elsewhere. Now, for your listeners who are interested in investments and opportunities, I travel all around. I'm a perpetual traveler. I seek out better places to put your money, places that better respect your capital. I believe that the bankrupt Western states are sliding for the very reason, or for one of the very reasons, that they just don't respect people's capital. And it's not going to be a safe haven for capital going forward. And so, here in Cambodia, for instance, you've got a dollarized economy that cuts out a lot of the currency risk that people worry about. You've got a stable government. You've got a government that's pretty laissez-faire when it comes to most industries outside of the resources sector. And you can come and you can do your thing. You've got, low-cost labor force, people entering the consumer markets in the middle class and the lower middle class every day, and they're putting that money back into consumer goods. So it's a great consumer market, not a bad tourism market, agriculture market. And those are the kind of opportunities I look for, and they're out there, and you don't have to settle for what you might find just in one country.
And we know a lot of other people that decided to leave the U.S. or whatever country they're from and move to another country so they can have more economic and personal freedom. One of them is Jeff Berwick from the Dollar Vigilante. We also have another colleague that left the U.S. and moved to Panama. So I just wanted to ask you, what was your moment that made you decided that, I don't want to be in the U.S. anymore, and I'd rather, take my business and capital and go elsewhere? Was there an event or a moment that made you decide to do that?
I think that, my parents taught me from a pretty early age that, hey, don't feel constrained by one set of borders. And so I always felt like, hey, I'm doing something here now, but I want to start a business here, some other country in the future. There were a couple things. When I was a very young adult and I started traveling, I would just notice arbitrage opportunities. I would ask myself questions about, why are people making higher interest rates in this country, or why is this the case over here? And so I started to say, listen, I'm going to start putting together a plan to take advantage of this. But I think that the thing that ultimately hit me was I was going through a personal situation with, the U.S. Embassy. I had someone I was trying to get a visa for, and it was just the most tormenting process that I've gone through, and it was very embarrassing. I said, you know what, I don't want to be, forget about just money. I don't want to be a part of a culture that does this, that a country that's on the decline, a country that's best days are behind it, and we're seeing a 21st century that I believe will be owned by Asia and a lot of these emerging economies. And I said, I want to be part of a country that understands not only how to respect my capital, but how to respect people and how to understand what its position, what its role in the world is. And I think that what we've seen in the United States especially, and I bag on it because it has a lot more power than any of the other bankrupt Western countries, in that it has had this number one role for so long, and it milks it for everything it's worth, whether it's to try and keep its own citizens from banking in other countries, whether it's to impose de facto capital controls, whether it's to do any number of things, start wars with Syria, or at least try. I think that can be very dangerous, and I think that the hand of such a government can be very dangerous. And I saw the writing on the wall that this is going to get worse.
And yeah, I agree with you there. Ever since, pretty much, for me, after 9/11, the way the government reacted and behaved, is I lost. For me, I lost a lot of respect for the U.S. government, mainly because after 9/11, we lost a lot of our personal freedom and privacy. We have, drones, surveillance, illegal spying. We got the NSA. We have the Patriot Act. We have Homeland Security. And so, also, from an economic point of view, we also had the housing bubble that occurred thanks to the government, Federal Reserve, and the casino of Wall Street. So a lot of what's going on after 9/11, I think, caused a lot of people to think about moving to other countries and taking their business elsewhere because, the U.S. government can do whatever they want. They can, take as much of your money as they want, and change the world when they want. So I think that's number one problem we have, entrepreneurs and businessmen have with the U.S. government.
Well, you're right, and here's the thing. I spent 9/11 at the killing fields in Cambodia. It's a very harrowing and saddening experience, but I wrote about it. I said, 12 years ago, look what happened in New York and on 9/11, but look what happened 35 years ago here, where 3 million people were killed, not even by bullets, but by just being beaten with blunt objects and tossed into graves, and even when they were still alive. And so when you go to these killing fields here in Phnom Penh now, you have some of the best, and I say this in a good way, but you've got some great propaganda against that government. Now it would be hard for anyone to get on board with what they did there. It was horrible, but the government reacted so strongly against that and came out so strongly against all the things, and they changed things around. And now, the government is encouraging, development, encouraging growth, and is, trying to move forward. They've learned from that in a different way, rather than cracking down and saying, hey, we have to take away civil liberties, and we have to make it impossible, and we have to tax people to death in order to make sure we never go back to that. We're going to go the other direction, and we're going to open up. And I think that, like they say, life is a small percentage what happens to you and mostly how you react. And we've seen how Western governments react. We've seen how Spain is taxing sunlight. We've seen, when people get desperate, when they get bankrupt, they may dip into your retirement account, your IRA. They may help themselves to your money in Cyprus. The rules have changed. And so I know you and I had talked about, why I like Asia, why I think Asia is a great place. And I think that there are a lot of places in Asia that understand where their bread is buttered and understand what they need to do to be successful, which a lot of places in the West have lost.
Right, and I agree there. So that, leads me to my next question. And what we get questions like this a lot, that, if something terrible happened in this country, and the economy just explode and it falls apart, or they have a dollar collapse and hyperinflation, what country can I go live and have a good standard of living and get a good job and etc. and then be safe and secure? So I want to ask you that question.
Yeah.
What is the best country to live outside the U.S. for entrepreneur businessmen and even regular people on Main Street?
Well, the first thing I recommend people to do is to have some kind of independent source of income that they can take with them. Now, people look at this as they have to do business on the internet. I hear everyone with their internet businesses, and that's fine. And I know people who make a lot of money doing that. But even if you have a consulting business and you're on the phone, you can do that from anywhere in the world these days. So if you're just looking for a place to live and you're looking for affordable places, you and I discussed South America. Paraguay is a place you can get pretty easy residence and even citizenship, which I think is important because there may come a time when you can't even have a U.S. citizenship. get anything done. That's already underfoot. So that's cheap. Ecuador is cheap standard of living. There's plenty of places in Latin America, even Chile, which I love for entrepreneurs, and they make it very easy to bring in people to work with, and they make it very easy to start a corporation. It's not as cheap, but certainly it's good for entrepreneurs. Like I said, I love the Philippines. I think is a place that's very cheap. It's a very Western standard of living in Asia. So you have a lot of the things that you may be accustomed to that you wouldn't otherwise have in like China, places like that. The Philippines is great, and you can live cheaply. The English-speaking workforce, outsourcing industry is extremely easy to get started into. I don't know that industry can grow that much more, but there are certainly opportunities there, especially if you speak a language other than English. And then Singapore, if you are doing higher-end stuff, or if you're have a little more money to throw around, Singapore and even Hong Kong are good places to move. But there are certainly some pretty cheap places that you can go to, and make sure that, I mean, what I always recommend to people is don't just trade one slave place for the next slave place. So start diversifying. So if you can get a passport in Paraguay, and if you can have your corporation based, in Hong Kong or in, the Seychelles, and then you can go and live somewhere else, that's a good way to do it, because you've got smaller countries that don't follow their citizens around the world for a penny, the way governments like the U.S. do, but you can also then geographically diversify so that you're free from a lot of sovereign risks, and you're also free from just being owned by one government.
And I believe that Hong Kong and Singapore are the number one and number two most capitalist country in the world. So
most free,
for people that so for people that want to start a business or have a business, those two countries would be a good place to go. And I think that's where Jim Rogers lives right now.
Jim Rogers lives in Singapore, and yeah, I mean, just read those economic freedom indexes. Hong Kong's been number one for ages. Singapore's 2. Look at what Singapore's done in 50 years. Again, momentum. Look at the momentum in the West. Look at the momentum of Singapore, having broken off from what's now Malaysia 1 or 2 years ago. Look at what they've done in that time.
Right, yeah, and one of the great things about Singapore is that the government, and also Hong Kong, that they favorable tax structure as well compared to the U.S., where the tax code is very complex and you need a tax accountant just to get your taxes done. So I think that's another big advantage moving your business overseas, especially in China, because if you start a business in China or Hong Kong, I believe that the first 3 years they won't tax any of your income, and after that it's 15%. So that's pretty good compared to what people pay in this country.
Well, right. There are deals. I mean, Singapore has some deals too for new people, and obviously, I mean, if you're going to be doing global business, look at what hedge funds do. Look at what places like Google do, and I mean, you can get pretty sophisticated. Obviously, the less tax, the better when you use legal strategies, and that's what we talk about at Nomad Capitalist is staying legal. And at least understanding that, hey, as a U.S. citizen, you have fewer opportunities than non-U.S. citizens, but at least you can do the best of what you can. But look, Cambodia has a flat 20% tax rate on business. I mean, Cambodia, the country that Americans, by and large, couldn't find on a map, and that people, what are you doing in Cambodia? What's in Cambodia? Yeah, much more free tax climate than the United States.
Yeah, I'd take a 20% flat tax rate over what we have in this country. I mean, every day I see a congressman coming out wanting to raise taxes or start a new tax on something that you just are already fighting over having an internet tax so they can suck more tax revenue out of the corporation and entrepreneurs, so they can continue to spend more money on government program and wars and etc. So it's that people out there should definitely check out what's going on outside the border of the U.S. if they want to start a business. So I want to shift gears here and talk about currency war, which we at Wall Street for Main Street have been talking about for the past 2 years. Now, since you travel around emerging countries a lot in the past few years, how has the currency war has affected the businesses overseas?
Well, I personally, I think I was in the Philippines in April, and I've seen the Philippine peso decrease about 8 or 9% since I was there. I think that some of these emerging market currency trends, I don't think that they'll last forever. I think that there will be some bullish opportunities more for traders than for actual business owners in some of these emerging market currencies. I mean, look what happened after 2009, and pretty much all of these currencies, bounced back from oblivion, whether it was the Singapore dollar, the Aussie dollar, and plenty of emerging market currency was on fire. But what I see with the currency wars is, first of all, entrepreneurs who have saved money or trying to start businesses, obviously it's tougher from them. It's harder for people who are entrepreneurs out of necessity in some of these countries like India, Cambodia, etc. It's harder for them to get started, especially in a dollarized economy like in Cambodia with the currency wars. But look at what else has happened. I mean, price bubbles in commodities, and there's no quick recovery anywhere. So I think emerging markets will be fine in time. I think that I don't necessarily see a lot of issues here, but I think you're going to see a lot of Western economies losing steam. I mean, look at what's happening in countries like Ireland, which I think have a lot of innovative potential, and they're still at 14% unemployment. I mean, they just can't get things going, no matter how bad the Eurozone, got. It's not working. So I see a lot of negativity everywhere, but I do think that places like Singapore and Hong Kong and the surrounding countries that have economic freedom, that are trying to do the right things, will pull out. It might not go as fast as we'd like, but I think that it will work out all right.
All right, and I think people should try to avoid trying to do business in countries like Japan or India, because their currency had been depreciating pretty quickly lately. For India, their currency depreciated 30% since March, and then for Japan, their currency depreciated at least 70% against the dollar since the Bank of Japan started their money printing program. So for people out there, I think they should look at countries that you mentioned, Singapore and Cambodia and other southern Asian countries, and try to avoid countries like Japan and India.
It really is amazing, Mo. I mean, you look at what if you would have told the generation before us, hey, there's going to come a time when the U.S. is going to be a slave state that spies on everything you do, and it's not a good place to start a business, that it's the 17th best place in the world to be born, that it's the 40th most stable banking climate, that has the 32nd best freedom of the press, that it's the 10th most free economy overall. They'd say, what planet are you from? But that's what has become today. And so people need to act accordingly. To say that the Philippines would be a better place to go, to say that Cambodia, 30 years ago after the Khmer Rouge got kicked out, would be possibly a better place to go to make more solid and more reliable investment returns. Well, look, there's a side effect of QE right there. When are you going to be comfortable buying stocks, knowing that it's not all just inflated voodoo? So if you're looking for real value, I say go to places that offer fundamental value, and that's places where fundamentals are growing. People are moving to the city, more people are making money, and they're spending it on consumer goods, that kind of thing. Those are the fundamentals, not just let's prop up real estate prices and because they never go down.
And right, and result of the currency war, a lot of people have been buying gold and silver, and protection of their decrease in purchasing power. Excuse me. And so, since you live in the Asian country, let's discuss the growing demand for gold and silver. Countries like India, China, Hong Kong, a lot of the other Asian countries are buying gold and silver like crazy in the year 2013. Ever since we got the dip for gold and went to 1,300 and silver went to $19 low for this year. What have you seen out there in terms of demand for gold and silver? Have you seen long lines? Have you seen a mania out there for gold and silver?
Well, I was in Singapore, and I was actually in a vault of one of the gold logistics companies there where you can store your gold, which is something that I talk about as offshore gold storage. And this was like one day after the big price drop in gold, and I was talking to the guy who runs this vault, and he said, well, what do you think? Not that this guy isn't an expert, but he said, well, what do you think about this price drop in gold? I said, you know what I think? I said, I think government manipulation, government propaganda. This is what the government does to try and keep its power over currencies and over people's money. So what did I see in Singapore then? I saw people, especially in Little India and places like that, lining up. Yes, I saw lines, people waiting to buy gold. And I think that in contrast to a lot of Western places that kind of see gold as this ancient thing that they pulled out of the ground, and yeah, it's cool, but it's more for museums than for our investment portfolio. I think that they don't understand, and I think, hey, let's not catch a falling knife. Whereas people in Asia, many of them, Indians and people like that, said this is a tangible asset that's on sale. We can get some of it now. We don't trust our government. We don't trust these fiat currencies. And we want to get our hands on more of this stuff. I mean, in China, they love it. I mean, you can buy, and they're making it harder, but you can buy gold over the counter at Hong Kong banks. And it's not as cheap as it used to be. I mean, the spreads have widened a little bit. But, I mean, where are you going in the United States and buying gold coins right over the counter? The difference between these economies and the Western economies is that more than half of Chinese millionaires want out, or they want their assets to be out, because they understand the fundamental issues that governments, they understand what governments do to their capital and to their freedom, and that's why they love tangible assets. So I think that Asia gets it, and I think that's a good thing, and if you protect yourself correctly, you don't have to worry about the kind of stuff that's going on in India right now where they're chasing after people's gold, or I was in Vietnam and they're talking about taking people's gold. Keep your gold in a safe haven, but do understand the trend behind that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also in India, they're talking about trying to control the gold import as well. And in result, the unintended consequences is people, instead of buying gold, now they buy silver, and they're smuggling gold into the country now. So the trend's not going to stop. People are going to continue to buy gold and silver as long as this currency war is going to keep going, because the history books had told us that gold and silver had been used for money for thousands and thousands of years. And for fiat currency, their value always went to zero eventually. So that's the growing trend that I see around here, and I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon, which is why I think gold and silver price is going to shoot up, because of the global demand for the two metals.
Well, yeah, and I think that, let's talk about the internationalization of precious metals. Silver, I do like personally, but I think that you need to consider what is going to happen when I need to sell this, and where do I possibly need to sell this again. If you were in Cambodia, if you were in Rhodesia, if you were in Nazi Germany, if you were in Myanmar here in Southeast Asia, all these places went from doing great to doing very, very badly overnight, and nobody saw it coming. So this is why I say, hey, have a safe haven. But keep in mind, how international is your gold? How international is your silver? Gold is easily convertible in places like China, but China does not like silver. People who hold American gold coins, I think, are at a disadvantage in the world, because those may be very popular in the United States, but you go to a place like China and they prefer Canadian coins or even Austrian coins. So I think when you're making these investments, you have to ask yourself, from a global point of view, what is it that I'm doing, and really understanding how the government works, how people are impacted, because around the world people have understood, because they've seen it with their own eyes, the government not being trustworthy. Thailand wants to ban Bitcoin now. Like I said, in Vietnam, they're talking about propping up the Vietnam dong that they trashed themselves, but now they want to prop it up perhaps by taking gold from people. This is what happens. And you look at what happens to the U.S. dollar, and people don't feel it because Americans don't travel as much. It's an insulated country. But look at what's happening and ask yourself, why can't these things happen here? And I'll tell you, the tour at the killing fields yesterday was very harrowing, because at the end, one of the narrators, who was a survivor of the prison, said, this can happen anywhere because it has happened so many places. Maybe not that level of atrocity, but these kinds of things do happen anywhere and everywhere, and to say it can't happen here is folly.
So do you recommend that people should diversify their holding of gold and silver? Like, there's a lot of websites out there, like goldmoney.com, where you can store your gold and silver in, like, China and Switzerland and U.S. and Canada and other locations, to diversify your holdings, so just in case the government wants to get in touch with your gold and silver, at least you have other metals stored in different locations.
Yeah, I believe that you have to be careful when you do that, and I'm not a financial guy. I'm a researcher who travels and talks about what I see. But what I believe is that we need to find jurisdictions. Now, for example, if you want to start a business and you want low cost of living, low cost of startup, low cost of labor, Cambodia is good, Philippines, all these places, whether it's South America, Eastern Europe, what have you, that's good. And I'm not saying that there's an instability here, but when it comes to picking the best of the best, Singapore is a place where money is flocking right now. People have been screwed over by Switzerland, and people in Europe, and especially the new rich in Asia, are all rushing to put their money in Singapore. And so you can store your gold in Singapore. You can bank easily in Singapore. They speak English. I personally would rather live in Hong Kong, but Singapore is a place that really understands economic freedom. It's a really stable country. It's not part of unholy alliances like the EU. It's not really close to the United States, kind of buddy-buddy like Canada is. And so, look at each of these countries where you may want to find a safe haven and say, what are the risks here? What's going on? For me, is one of the top ones that comes up. And I say, yeah, you know what? You should diversify. To keep every ounce of gold you have in a coffee can in your mother-in-law's basement, as my friend Gerald Salente talks about, I don't agree, because we've seen what has happened, and we've seen what lengths the government will go to. When you come back into the U.S., they have sniffing dogs, not just for weapons, but for currency in some airports. When are they going to start going to such draconian measures that you can't get any of your gold out? That it will be like Nazi Germany. Will that come? I don't know. But what's the harm in having some of your gold sitting in a vault somewhere in a stable country? I don't see the harm.
I don't see the harm either. If you have the capital and the resources to do it, I definitely recommend people that they should diversify and put their assets and capital outside the U.S. banking system, because you never know what the government's going to do, because every day they change the rule, or they come back and say one thing and say the other, or they say one thing and do the opposite. So for people out there, they should definitely think about diversifying their holdings. And, just to realize that when you go live in a country outside the U.S., there's no perfect country out there that's going to, make you 100% happy. You just got to, pick your poison sort of and see what fits best for you and your goals and what you want to do in life. Is that correct?
Well, right. So I say two things. First of all, I can tell people the places that I like. I think that there are some great investment opportunities, maybe places you wouldn't want to live, and vice versa. But again, that's the whole beauty of geographical diversification. But what I would tell people is, find a place that works for you, but also seek out the best of the best. friends who live in California, which is a place that ticks none of the boxes for stable investing, in my opinion. But I visited them a couple times over the years when I was in the U.S., and we went to the Hollywood Bowl and saw some classical music during the summer this time of year. It's a great time. And they said, well, don't you miss that? Don't you miss that being in Cambodia? I said, yeah, but you know what? I'm going to be in Vienna in a couple months where they invented classical music, and I'm going to see the best of classical music. So if you like that, then you should do that. If you like to bank, find the best place to bank. If you like the beach and living on the beach, find the best beach in the world. Is it in Thailand or the Philippines? Find it and go there and live there. Don't settle for a mediocre beach. You know, if you want to start a company, what's the best place to start the kind of company you want? Go for the best. And you're right, there's no best in every country. The best is spread around depending on what you're looking for. But the number one thing that I believe in is that if you're an American, the U.S. government has such a wide reach. We've seen that with the NSA. I saw a headline this morning that the NSA shares details with Israel. It's a never-ending, octopus of just having their hands in every direction. And so, if you live in a country that's small, if you have a company in a country that's small, if you bank in a country that's stable, you can get around a lot of the nonsense that they do. People in the government in Paraguay is not chasing people around the world, asking them, how many foreign corporations they own. Now, I believe in playing by the rules because the penalties are too great for not doing so. But getting started, even if it's just, hey, where can I live? I want to live in the Philippines because I love the beaches, or I want to live in Panama because I love the culture there. Heck, live in Mexico, because it's a lot cheaper and because it's not as bad as they say it is, and because I can live here and be more free. Wherever it is for you, start diversifying and benefiting, because the rest of the world, I believe, I'm very bullish on freedom. I believe the rest of the world is going to see a renaissance, and it's going to see a lot of benefits. But if you're only in one country, you're going to miss out on pretty much all of it.
And that's an interesting point that you made there. Well, Andrew, thank you for coming on for Wall Street from Main Street podcast. Why not, before we let you go, why not you tell us more about the nomadcapitalist.com?
Well, I write articles every day from around the world. I write field reports from where I'm based at nomadcapitalist.com. I talk about how to find more economic freedom, observations that I make, like I said, on business, freedom, opportunity, lifestyle. And our goal is to help people find more of all of those things: better life, more freedom, opportunity. And one of the things that I do offer for people who are new is I've got a free report that they can get there as well and kind of learn more in detail some of my 7 steps for getting started. But it's all about getting out of the mindset that we've been brainwashed into, that there's only one, no matter how bad it gets, it's still the best it is. Just getting on a plane and going to these places, as I do full time, will show you that that's not true. But once you reach that point, what's the next step? How do you actually take action? That's what we talk about.
And that's great. And if people want to find out more about your work, they go to nomadcapitalist.com. Is that correct?
Nomadcapitalist.com. Exactly right, Mo.
All right. Well, Andrew, thank you for coming on, and hopefully you can come back on in the future.
My pleasure.